Sorry about that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for attending today. We'll be talking about using Stratum for planning so that we can update numbers within Stratum for our sales plans, our budgets, or anything else that you can think of that you might want to let users manage, update, change. Today, we'll be focusing in on the Analyst Hub part of Stratum, and we'll be talking about this concept here of using multi-level planning. We'll take a look at the data copy utility as well, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the concept of using planning to change to allow the users to make changes to forecast or budgets or plans. So we'll concentrate again today on the Analyst Hub side of things of managing data and getting data back into Stratum, and we'll take a look at how the planning capability works and using either data copy or any other piece of information or source of data that you want to use to seed your forecast and budgets. So the concept of setting up a view so that it could be used for planning purposes, there's quite a bit of thought and planning that would need to take place before you would actually get to this point. So typically a project would be in place for you to discuss with other resources within your company. Of course, you could have us help you. Definitely would recommend that, where we can guide you through a project to get this created for you. And you would think about, what dimensions that you would want to use typically for forecasting or budget purposes. Normally, these aren't very highly populated. Um, you know, Normally if you have a budget, it's really only at high company levels, and uh, it's not a very granular piece of data. Uh, Probably the same could be said for forecasts, although I've seen forecasts down at item levels, which again is a reality sometimes depending on where you are. So if we were to set this up and go through the components of setting that up, you then would have the capability of using a view to make updates to your plan. So, I'm now running a view, and I'm going in to see, and it's already asking me what region and any customers that I want to work with out of the gates. So as soon as I run the view, I get prompted with a region that I need to select before I move any further. So I'm going to go ahead and select the East region. That might be my territory. This is something that is my jurisdiction, so I go ahead and click OK to that. It then returns the data for the East region, and now I can actually manage my forecast. So here I see that I've got product brand, product, and sold to as my levels that I use for my forecast. And I've already got a forecast in place. Down here, we can see that for the following year, I'm managing the forecast for next year. I've got some data points in place that I can make available for the users so that they can kind of eyeball what last January, the last month's sales was, um, the current month sales. So this would be obviously for December of the prior year, last year's sales, and this year's year-to-date sales, which is typically going to be smaller than last year's sales. Any open orders would be indicated here, and I don't seem to have any populated, but that would be a good thing to know as well. Is what's in the hopper? What's any additional demand that I haven't met yet? What does that look like? And then to the last measure for January is the actual forecast. So here I can see that the current month sales is 8,200, and that's for again, that's the current month of the year that I'm in, not for January. So current month 8,200. Last year's sales for January was 6,600, and now I'm actually calling for 8,500 for next January. I can actually go in and I can force that up or down depending on my knowledge of that brand. Perhaps maybe I'm running some heavy promotions on that, and I imagine more um, units would be necessary. So I can actually come in here and type a number in that I think that that number should be for January of next year. It tabs me over to February, and I might want to follow in that same trend. Maybe make that 9,500 instead of 10,000. Again, based on my knowledge and what I think is January and February promotional activity would look like for that particular brand. For Farm Fresh, I could do the same thing. This is one of my bigger brands. So down here, maybe I'm gonna take that down a notch. Instead of 200,000, I'll make that 195,000 instead. All right. So I've made some changes, and as you can see, the data then gets reflected in red. Once I make that change, it shows me that those are the cells that I went into to make that change. And now I want to save them. Okay. So I want to save those numbers so that I can drill down on them and I can see, how they proportioned out to the product level, and then even more importantly to my sold tos. So let's go ahead and do that. This is what we would call a more of a top down. I'm kind of working at a more of an aggregate level, and I'm forcing data to be now driven down to the item and sold to levels. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my process change. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that's going to save my changes uh, to back to Stratum, and that'll give me the ability now to do more now further analysis. First of all, it saves my data so that now those numbers will stick, and so now I can actually drill down on these. For instance, for Farm Fresh, we saved that we actually changed that from 200,000 to 195,000. So let's drill that down to the product level, and I'm going to click in on Farm Fresh, and that drills me to the product level. And there's a lot more data down here. So now I know why I like to work up at the product brand level because, again, this is going to be a little bit more, overwhelming. And in my world, I live in a fake world with demo data. In your world, you can see thousands of rows of data here. So, some things to keep in mind in forecasting is the ease of use here, the ease of manageability of my forecast, and being able to work at higher levels and having that, making those changes there, and then having those changes being reflected automatically down at the lower levels, which is what I see here. For instance, if I look at January's forecast, which I just changed, if I go down to the bottom and see what my total is, it should reflect that 195,000 number. And indeed it does. So there it is. So now I know that the number is good and that it foots down at the product level, right? What about sold to? If I were to drag and drop sold to for that brand, what is that going to look like? It's going to look the same. I'm still going to have that same number. So that gives me a level of comfort and confidence to know that Stratum is able to actually manage this forecast at the different levels and to keep this number managed for me, right? And that's what you want. And that now, I can actually manage it by account. So basically, let's talk about the promotion. I actually ratcheted this number back a bit because it was too high in my opinion. And then also, maybe I am running a promotion for a given account, and now I can do a further update now that drilled in on that product brand and that particular sold to. So for Sumter Western Division, maybe I'm running a promotion and I'm anticipating more units for that particular account. So now I'm actually drilled down on the product brand, and now I'm actually updating a number for a specific account. Okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and click on save to that, and that's gonna go ahead and save that number down at the just for Sumter Western Division. And there it is. So indeed, it did, obviously affected my total, but based on my knowledge, I'm anticipating for that particular account, I'm okay with that. Okay. And this goes on and on and on, right? I can do this all the way out to December, um, and manage this forecast for all my months that I have available, um, and manage it for the different levels and the different accounts that I see fit. So, again, this is something that you can work at a top level, down at a low level. I can even bring this up to all the way up to the year level and change the number at the year level and make an overall global change for a given account. Maybe I'm anticipating growth, and maybe this was a new account, and maybe I want to bump that number up a bit for just one given account for Harrington's for Farm Fresh. So again, you can really kind of have at it here, whether you're at the product brand sold to or the product level. You have the ability to go in and make those changes and save those away. And notice that it does require that you use a view that has a time as a dimension, so that the view needs to have that turned on. It has to have those time dimensions in place in order for you to effectively use this feature. So where does that forecast come from? Well, it could come from anywhere, really. I mean, if you're already using a forecasting tool and you want to feed that into Stratum, certainly you could, use that and load that in to Stratum via the back end and have that available so that you can actually use those numbers that you're generating, maybe already using a forecasting tool. Another concept would be to use our data copy feature. So if I go into my analyst tools in my Strata menu, I can see that I've got a data copy feature available to me. And if I go into a data copy job, I can then see and tell it what data it is that I want to copy. First of all, I have an email menu so that it knows it can send me an email when the job finishes. And then I can either add or replace data depending on what I want to do. We'll just go ahead and click on add because this is something that's new. I need to source the data from somewhere. My sales might be a good idea to grab it from one of my demand categories. And then where do I put it? I can put that into a budget or a forecasting category. So, now I've got those selected. I need to tell it what measure it is that I want to copy. So I might want to copy my units. I can apply a factor. Maybe I want to multiply it by a certain percentage. 1.2 would give it a 20% bump increase. And then where do I want to put it? What measure do I want to put that into? And I can put that into my units working. And then if I wanted to copy another piece of data, maybe my dollar amounts, and apply that same percentage, I can do that as well. And I can put that into my units or amount working. So Stratum gives you the ability to actually copy your sales data or any other category that your administrators would deem necessary so that you can get that demand data and roll with it and copy it over so that you can actually use that as your initial forecast, your initial budget, whatever it is that you want to call that. And you can leverage the history that you have within Stratum and get that into a workable format so that your users could actually use that as a starting point and massage the numbers as necessary. The next frame or the next tab would be, what history do I want to bring over, and what time units? Typically, if we're talking about forecasting and budgets, normally the time units would be in a monthly fashion. Maybe I want to go back to last year. So all the time frames that you're used to working with within Stratum are available and are now selectable. So if I want to copy for a given month or maybe for the entire year, then I can go in and make the appropriate selections so that I can get the entire year copied over. I then make that into, and I copy that into next year. I have to, of course, align everything up so that it's got the same number of months. Okay. And you do have your offsets in case you want to use those. I do not want to use those, but that's typically something that you would use um, if you want to offset the time periods. And then a filter. These are nice because maybe you only want to copy for a given company or division, and then apply that filter. So, for instance, maybe I'm just doing the food service division, and now I'm copying the data strictly just from that division. It's a nice way of, again, not copying the entire, data warehouse, which is something you'd want to avoid. And again, the data mapping would dictate, how much data you would be bringing over. Right. But these levels, again, the back end, what levels would get populated would depend on, the common levels that you have for the actual sales category and the budget category. So the budget category, again, would typically only have, a subset of number of levels that typically that the actual sales category would have. But once I'm ready to process that job, I can go ahead and submit that job for processing, and that would then go ahead and process, and then I would get that email that I filled out in the general tab that the data copy job has finished, and I can actually go in and start working with that data immediately. Once the job finishes, then the data becomes available, and as long as the view is set up for me to work with it, I can then go in and make the appropriate adjustments within my view, just like we saw before. So that job runs. I go back into my sales plan input. I select my East region. I click OK. And so now I've got my new budget in place where I can go in and make the appropriate adjustments for any one of my months, and then plan that there. Another cool feature is that I can do some copy and paste. So if I want to copy an entire line here and paste it, or a subset thereof, I can do that. So I can copy that. If I want to just place that over here, I can do that. As you can see, it's just copied that entire column. The numbers match. So again, that might be as realistic to do for a given column, but maybe there's a subset of data that you want to copy. You're able to do that too. So, so make it easier on yourself. If you see situations or maybe some things, some data that would be relevant and necessary to copy into other cells, then you certainly have that ability to do so. Um, I would encourage you to go into your help um, menu. If you go into your help menu and go to online help, um, if you do a search for planning, you're going to get a lot of good information. I would start with working with planning, and that brings up the overall menu for the planning capability. It shows you who has access to what, in terms of what they can do, and how they can affect the numbers. Um, it shows you a nice introduction to kind of like my demo. It kind of explains these concepts of changing the numbers, etc. Definitely want to go through some of this. It'll show you what needs to be thought of in order to set some of this stuff up. Security, who are the users that are going to have this feature, and how should that security be set up accordingly. Um, it goes into more copying and paste to make those changes that I just showed you. Kind of goes into more information about all that. So this is definitely something, and then you get some examples of how to set some of these views up, and it goes into some more lengthy detail about what you can do, what you can't do, that type of thing. So definitely want to check out the online help. Read through that if you're interested. This is definitely something you could read through more and get more of a feel for how this might work for your enterprise. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions or you want to pursue this further. I'd be glad to show you a demo and go into more detail about how you can use planning to help you with your forecast and budgeting processes. Um, other ideas that you can use this for is for costs. And you could set up like cost scenarios and playgrounds, sandboxes that your accountants can play around and change costs and see how that affects your gross margins. So it's just not limited to sales and forecasting. It's basically whatever it is that you want users to change. And if you already have the existing data for it, it works out really well in those scenarios. So it's something to keep in mind.